In 1929, multiple scientists independently make the same breakthroughs at the same time. The subjects in which these breakthroughs occurred included calculus, theory of evolution, color photography, thermometers, telescopes, typewriters, and steamboats. It appears that our thoughts are not as private as we think. When we work to solve a problem, we may be accessing a universal data bank of knowledge. The information then appears in our minds as if it was our own unique idea. Let's not forget that these 148 cases are only examples where inventors tried to patent the same things at the same time. A conscious universe. Do you believe not only that the universe is alive, but also could be conscious and self-aware? There's a plan and a purpose to our lives on earth that's greater than most of us have ever realized. And we are definitely not alone. There is undeniable scientific proof that we might reincarnate again. We also keep moving through the same lessons in our history as they repeat in incredibly precise patterns. Everyone on earth ultimately sharing the same mind, much more than we would ever dare to believe. I would find impressive scientific discoveries that supported this concept. For example, a group of 7,000 people meditating on thoughts of love, peace, and happiness were somehow able to reduce acts of terrorism worldwide by 72%. The level of wars, crimes, fatalities, and economic suffering all dropped remarkably just from this very small group of people meditating privately in one location. This was documented in a professional scientific study which was accepted by and published in Journal of Offender Rehabilitation. By 1993, 50 different scientific studies had demonstrated this same effect over the preceding 30 years. The meditators improved the overall health and the quality of life for people on earth, boosted the economy, and decreased accidents, crime, war, and terrorism. Nearly 3 out of 4 people who would normally have committed an act of violent terrorism decided not to, while these 7,000 people were at work meditating. These would-be terrorists obviously had no idea that their decision to be violent could be so profoundly influenced by others. All they knew is that they simply felt better and they made more positive choices. Their thoughts and feelings were nowhere near as we call signs, are only one of the series of competing influences. We talked about collective consciousness. Another paranormal evidence is the energetic influences of planets and moons. Interestingly, Dr. Carl Jung, the father of Synchronicity and associate of Dr. Sigmund Freud, revealed that the meanings of the 12 signs of the zodiac are not arbitrary. In astrology, they represent a specific type of personality. Signs of astrology have an effect because planets and moons have effects on us. Dr. Carl Jung studied the moon has a statistically significant effect on violent crime, then perhaps the positions of the planets affect how we think and feel as well. Beginning in 1949, Michael Gauquelin analyzed the astrology of thousands of notable historical figures and found that certain types of people were more apt to be born with planets in key positions. The Russian scientist Alexander Chizhevsky presented a comprehensive scientific evidence that our collective experiences may be influenced by certain astrophysical factors. The third, paranormal activity, conventional examples of cycles in history. As we all know, the word history repeats itself. For example, the Lincoln-Kennedy connection. The similarity between the two figures and their interest in civil rights. The fourth paranormal activity is synchronicity. As I explained, Dr. Carl Jung, in 1920, he's the father of synchronicity. He's a Swiss psychologist who studied under the pioneer Dr. Sigmund Freud. He explained that synchronicity is the occurrence of certain events simultaneously, meaning beyond more coincidence. An example of synchronicity, Dr. Wilcock explained when he was examining a young girl. She was describing seeing certain beetle in her dream, and suddenly at the window the same kind of beetle appeared. Dr. Carl Jung also believed that astrology was a valid form of synchronicity. He studied more than 483 married couples and found a relationship between astrology and their partnership and the level of happiness. Recently, Mani is researching and studying numerical synchronicity, seeing repeating patterns such as 1111, 1212, 333, 555, or other combinations 222, 444. Or 1212. Most people don't realize that our modern theories of synchronicity were developed by the same scientists whom skeptics often use to discredit them. However, simply becoming aware of synchronicity can make it start happening a lot more often. In that sense, I recommend reading the book The Synchronicity Key. Dr. Carl Jung also discussed what he calls the dark night of the soul. When we go through this experience, it seems like it's the end of the world, but we can learn to see it as only one part of a much greater series of events in our own evolution. This experience also happens on a collective planetary level, as we go through the great repeating cycles of war, disasters, and epic changes. Synchronicity can take on many forms, and once you decide to see a certain event or symbol as meaningful, messages can then be communicated to you this way. Many people have a favorite number that starts appearing in a variety of different places, seemingly as random. In synchronicity, you may decide to grab a book, particularly an inspirational title. Relax your mind as much as possible. Ask a question and then open to a particular page and read the answer. You may start seeing a creature like the example of the beetle, or a deer, or a rabbit. You may feel a sudden rush of energy in particular part of your body, or a pain, or a tingling, or a ringing in your ear for no apparent reason. Of course, telepathic events can be classified as synchronicity as well. You find yourself thinking about someone, and then the phone rings and it's them, or you bump into them at the store. Synchronicity was actively being discussed by some of the finest scientific minds of the 20th century, including Albert Einstein, key founders of quantum mechanics, and Carl Jung. Now let's talk about sociopath. It's another aspect of paranormal activities. Psychologists refer to this strongly negative personality type as a psychopath or sociopath. The people in this category have almost completely turned off their empathy and care for others, or at least those outside their chosen group. It's important to point out that everyone by nature has tendencies that are sociopathic to a certain degree. All of us are capable of being cruel to others and dismissing their feelings, and yet still thinking of ourselves as 100% good. Behavioral genetic doctor Dr. David Lycan concluded that children with sociopathic tendencies, like aggressiveness, can have those personality characteristics directed toward more positive behaviors by loving parents with good boundaries. In undergraduate psychology of adjustment class, it says, like, good parenting requires consistent punishment paradigm in which the child knows exactly where the boundaries are. The child should be aware that every time those boundaries are tested, the same punishment will result. Permissive parenting, in which parents are overwhelmed by their children's behavior or misbehavior, are not always consistent in punishing them for it, is actually one of the most damaging forms of child abuse. Even in adulthood, sociopathic behavioral traits can be transformed into positive qualities in certain leadership. Everyone is on a spectrum between positive and negative, and learning to admit that can be a very powerful tool in your spiritual awakening. People with sociopathic qualities are not evil or beyond hope. However, in the most extreme cases, they may require extensive rehabilitation, including a complete prevention of any way for them to harm others before any real personality change is possible. Most people are not sociopathic, but are still quite capable of being self-involved, manipulative, and controlling, particularly when they feel shamed or emotionally injured in some way. Wealth and power can lead to sociopathic behavior. One example for that, a lady who won the lottery. Her name was Sandra Hayes, a former child services worker in the US. She split $224 million jackpot prize with a dozen of her co-workers in 2006 and collected a lump sum in excess of $6 million. To pay the well of your peers, you can be very strong. She said it was dramatic. She discovered along with many other lottery winners that they wanted to suck every penny from her. People behavior sometimes is unpredictable when you have wealth. The difficulties of having lifelong friends turn on you and want you to give them your money can be really a disaster. Another interesting paranormal activity is called the Bystander Effect. It shows how sociopathic behaviors can occur in otherwise ordinary people when they are in a group. A lady called Kitty Genovese was stabbed to death by a serial killer and murderer on March 13, 1964. She was assaulted, and initial estimates were that even though she screamed and pleaded for help for at least half an hour, 38 witnesses were aware of the stabbings and failed to intervene or call the police until the attacker fled the scene and Genovese was dead. Many deaths occur that are entirely preventable if people in groups would intervene sooner. This is established by many experiments. Another aspect of paranormal activity, healing and absorbing from distance. As I mentioned earlier in a previous video, once we have created a tunnel of thoughts between ourselves and someone, the exchange of photons flows in both directions. In cases when we are healing others, we send more photons into the body of the person who needs healing. But when we absorb energy, we are actively pulling photons out of someone's body. As soon as we direct energy thoughts at someone, a tunnel is automatically formed, and we immediately begin trying to pull photons through it. Successfully, we have to break the other person down by causing them to feel negative emotions such as guilt, fear, shame, sadness, anger, disgust, terror, or shock. However, if the person stays in a loving but firm state and refuses to allow him or herself to be bullied while also not indulging in negative emotions, his or her own vital energy will be protected and nothing is lost. This is one of the most important laws to master it if you want to preserve and protect your vital energy. Karma is real. As the wheel of karma keeps turning, we experience the highest highs and the lowest lows that life has to offer us. Actions have consequences. We do not live in a vacuum. There are no private thoughts. We are here to learn to love each other. Whatever we measure out to others will be measured out and turned to us as consistently and inevitably as the law of gravity keeps up to the earth. For those who have already seen the truth, it's obvious. Many of the events that happen to us, including the most wonderful and the most seemingly disastrous, are not random at all. Invisible forces are constantly at work, shaping and arranging whatever will then unfold in our lives. Karma doesn't appear to be enforcing an absolute law about free will. If we honor and support the free will of others, we are choosing love, and if we manipulate the free will of others, we are choosing the path of control. Everything we say and do is being evaluated on unseen level by ourselves and others to see whether we are choosing love or control. The events that happen in our lives are not random. They are the direct results of the choices we are making. If you choose to shame, humiliate, disrespect, and demean others, to manipulate and control them for your own gain, then a very similar set of experiences will happen to you. If you choose to deny others' feelings, then others will deny your feelings. If you create love, even in situations where it seems ignorant or impossible to do so, then love will indeed be returned to you. Best of all, the entire wheel of karma can be stopped through forgiveness. It's hard, yes, I know, but these upsetting events can repeat only until we learn the greatest teaching of the universe, that we are all one and there's only identity. Once you delve into this new reality and observe it happening in your life, you may soon realize that none of us are exempt from this system of accounting, regardless of whatever you may or may not believe. After you become aware of karma and watch it play out in your life, some people are stubborn, unwilling to see it, even in these cases where it should be obvious. An example of instant karma: a woman who was raising 2 toddlers on her own, working a full-time job just to get by, leaving the kids in daycare while working, and struggling to make enough money to survive. She couldn't do anything fabulous, but at least as much as she can do. Her friend couldn't help her. Not that she asked for that, any financial assistance. The father had run out on his family and had been ordered by the court to pay child support. He refused to get a job because working didn't feel good. For months, he paid nothing, causing that lady to wonder whether she should take legal action. Finally, he agreed to pay a rather large lump sum amount, which secretly he borrowed from his father. He acquired the money in cash and said he was coming to drop it off to her. Then, she didn't hear from him for 2 days. Finally, he told her the cash had been stolen out of his car. It was tragedy. He now felt that he didn't have to pay her back, as this was horrible crime, and he obviously shouldn't be forced to earn that same money twice. The next day, he was driving a brand new car, a black SUV. He refused to talk about how he had acquired that SUV car. He just completely shut her down. That very same night, the vehicle skidded off the road, rolled sideways down the hill like a barrel, and was destroyed beyond repair. Somehow, he was unharmed, but this accident triggered communication that would have seemed impossible before then. His father reconnected with that lady, told her he had given his son the cash, and was obviously certain that his son had used it to make a down payment for the new SUV car at the dealership. So she wouldn't figure out what happened between the father and the son, but strongly suspect it wasn't pretty, for sure. In another case, I will tell you another story about instant karma. When you make fun of someone or mock him or her, and then the same thing happened to you, it's an instant karma. The topic of reincarnation, I will discuss it in my next video. If you like my content, please subscribe and share.